Welcome to StartupJab.
And welcome to episode 27 of StartupJab. We survived Snowzilla, or Edward Snowden, or David Snowy, or whatever ridiculous hashtag people were using.
Snow v. Wade.
Excuse me. Yes, that's a good one. I am, of course, one of your two hosts, Jason Ellis. With me, as always, the snowman to my deranged killer monster, Snowgoon, Teague Hopkins. Teague, did you like that Calvin and Hobbes reference?
That's good. I like it. I like any Calvin and Hobbes reference.
Well, I think we can all agree on that. Next time, you'll be the spaceman spiff to my tracer bullet. How's that? We're both stupendous, man. Let's just call it that. Anyway, we appreciate you guys all joining us. It is a beautiful Thursday here when we're recording, both on our live Blabcast as well as our podcast recording. I do want to take a second, though, before we jump into our usual, hey, how you doing questions and such, to just give a quick shout out and let you guys know that we have started adding some stuff to our podcast listeners' feeds. So if you're only checking us out on Blab, you're actually missing out.
It's
I know.
True.
It's sad, but it is true. So we recommend that if you are interested in getting your full StartupJab, daily recommended diet, we recommend that you join us over on your favorite podcasting system, either iTunes or whatever makes you happiest for Android, and come check us out, because we've got a couple of mini episodes we're recording. We've got some special subscriber-only stuff that we're doing. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, we're expanding, because after 27 episodes, it's time to grow up a little bit.
A little bit. Maybe not yet.
Yeah.
We've still got a few more episodes before the midlife crisis, right?
Is this not a midlife crisis? I thought that's what I was experiencing.
Oh, good. And if you guys are on our mailing list, you will get both updates about upcoming live shows and updates when we post something new to the podcast. So if you get on the mailing list, you'll get notifications about all the things.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. Well, with that, let me just ask Teague, how are you doing, buddy?
I am doing quite well. We survived the blizzard of 2016 in our impervious castle, otherwise known as a large apartment building.
Solid work, my friend.
Yeah.
My row house was filled to the gills this weekend with people who needed somewhere to go that wasn't their English basement apartment. As my roommate here in the live chat can attest, it was it was an adventure, mostly filled with eating and watching a ton of really bad television. Anyway, I did bite it. I totally bit it in front of my office twice after the snowstorm ended. Oh, man. Full on, like, cartoon splayed out, ass up in the air, head in the dirt. It was a whole thing. It's really not good when the local homeless guy, who is talking to himself a lot, stops his conversation to himself, turns to you, and asks if you're okay. That's never a good sign.
That's nice. I thought you were going to say when he just laughs at you for wiping out.
No, he's a very generous soul. It's just
That's
he's
nice.
If he's worried about your safety and concerned about your well-being, you have fallen quickly, I guess I would say.
Yeah. I think there's been a couple folks complaining about people not, shoveling the walks in front of their property, and certainly once when the snow melts and then refreezes into a sheet of ice, you gotta walk like a penguin so you don't fall down, right? It's weight forward. There's a great diagram for it. It's physics. That's a tangent for another day.
Indeed. Well, instead of tangenting, why don't we dive right into it? Teague, I know you've got a news item that you are hot to discuss, my friend.
So this is kind of just a fun one that I want to throw out there. Formula E, which is the electric racing league, has announced a driverless car championship. So not only do these cars now no longer use gasoline, right, or diesel, they're electric cars, and now they won't have drivers either. It's going to be completely autonomous. So it'll be a testament to the cars' software teams as well as their hardware teams to try and create these vehicles that will compete at 300 kilometers per hour, which somebody can do the conversion on that.
It's just shy of 200 miles an hour.
Yeah, a little under 200 miles an hour, which and have the computer driving the car, which I think is fantastic. It certainly makes it a little bit safer. But
I suppose that depends on your definition of safe. I mean, yes, it's safer for the humans, except if the cars malfunction and veer off the road.
Well, there is that, and robot rights and everything. Right? There's a Futurama reference in there somewhere.
There is. That's pretty cool. The one thing I'm concerned about is the fact, and it's not really the concern so much as something that I'm interested in. It's the choice to go with software-driven directing versus a human actually behind. I mean, the human remote controlling, sort of, like the way that you had those RC cars where you'd hold on to the little black grip, and then you'd have the wheel that you could adjust and turn accordingly.
Right, right. Well, the first-person drone racing is a separate league.
Oh, okay. So it's just a difference in league. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, one of them is cars, and one of them is little flying drones. But both of those will exist, and as live sports get closer and closer to esports.
Yes, indeed. Wow,
converging in both directions.
Well, it's what is it? It's the convergence where we all become basically just artificial intelligences. It's not the convergence. What's the term for
singularity?
It? The singularity. Thank you. We're converging on the singularity. That's what I was going for. Yeah. Anyway, I like it. I think it's cool. I like the name RoboRace. It's just direct, simple and easy.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's very interesting to see. It's on some level you could presumably simulate a lot of the race, but live race conditions are always going to be slightly more complicated than any simulation is able to capture.
Sure.
But yeah, and as Ryan in the chat is saying, Formula One has had issues with cheating for years related to software-based throttle control, right? Because Formula One race cars, I believe, are artificially limited to their performance specifications, and this is on some level they're just saying like, all right, fine, we're gonna take out all the restrictions and just let you go at it, right? You can design the best car, and you can have a computer driving it and just do the this is the unlimited league, right? It's eventually there will be the you must have a human driver league and the unlimited league, because clearly the computers have faster reflexes than the humans, and they're going to make better split time decisions.
Yeah, but first computers are driving, and then they're taking over our basketball games. And where does it end, Teague? Where does it end?
It doesn't end with Go.
No, that is correct.
It does not, because Google's AI playing the Go board game has finally beaten a champion.
Really,
it's the beginning of the end for the human dominance of the board game Go. As this is we've it's been a long time since humans were able to beat the best computers at chess, but Go is a perhaps exponentially more complicated solution space. There are a lot more board positions and moves that you can have in Go, and Google has finally created a distributed AI that has been able to beat, I believe it was the European champion at 5 games out of 5 in Go.
Interesting. All right. Well, Go was never my strong suit, so I'm interested.
Mine either. I'm pretty sure computers have been able to beat me at Go for at least 20 years.
Yeah, and chess and checkers and sometimes Battleship too. It's terrible.
Yep.
Although I did play a lot of Jeopardy growing up on the computer. CD-ROM, bad rendering of Alex Trebek, the whole 9 yards, man. I loved that.
So you think you could beat Watson?
I don't know if I could beat Watson. Probably not. I could definitely take Watson in You Don't Know Jack, because that was another favorite.
There you go.
And I got to tell you, those guys, man, they could make a trivia game. That was something else. If anybody knows anybody at Jellyvision in Chicago and wants to put in a good word for us, please do.
Yeah, this is a good set of games.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, that's really cool. Well, I don't know. When driverless cars become a real thing and none of us ever have to pay attention, the irony would be that we spend our time watching driverless racing. I think that would be the way to do it.
That's absolutely the way it's going to work. I love it.
All right.
Okay.
Cool.
With that wonderful detour into sports and gaming completed, let's jump into the meat of our episode. We're talking today about some of the big problems for early stage startups, and from a couple of different sources. Some of these are questions that we were asked to answer on Quora, and some others we've culled from the related questions on Quora. So we're gonna do a Quora day and try to answer a few of these questions. The first one comes from somebody who is working with a startup, and they're asking, how do you teach early stage startups to use the lean startup methodology? This person is currently working with an early stage startup that is very committed to their solution, and he or she believes that from talking to them, it's pretty obvious that they haven't really solved customer problem fit yet, but they believe they do, or they believe they have. So that's an interesting challenge. Jason, you want to kick that off?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a basic early lean challenge. At any time you're advising somebody who's trying to use lean for the first time, one of the first things you tend to see is this, where they've come up with this concept and they're convinced that it's a great business idea. And in lean, unless you've selected and found a problem, right? You've done the research to identify an actual need that exists in the market. Creating a solution ahead of that problem doesn't really work, because then you're not taking a problem and creating a solution that you think will work. I've created a solution, now I got to back it into a problem. That's like saying, I know that, it's like saying I know that X equals 6, but I got to find the formula where that's a question. And that's not how that works.
It's easier in math.
It is easier. It's easier in math because I can pretend, 2x minus 6, X equals 6. Sure. Can't believe I did that in my head. It's
transitive.
It's transitive property.
Yeah, transitive property.
Sure. Take a breath.
Yeah, it's symmetric and bidirectional. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
And I'm being made fun of in the chat here for my math skills. I'll have you know I made it to AP Calc, and I got a C in it twice, so we're good. And that is actually the hard limit of my math understanding and knowledge. Anyway, more to the point. The problem solution question in lean is definitely a challenging one. I know that in the past, the way that it's been worked out for me is to use either a Javelin board or even perhaps a business model canvas of some kind to help somebody establish sort of what the procedure should look like, rather than trying to show how their solution doesn't back into a problem the way that they think it does. I don't know, Teague. I think that my only concern with my suggestion is that sometimes people need to be first really, really specifically educated on any of the boards that are available to help establish this. What are your thoughts on using that as a tool early on?
Well, so first of all, I think you're absolutely right that they've got it's the solution searching for a problem, right, classic challenge, right? I mean, they've built something that seems really cool, but they don't know who they're solving a problem for. And that's really difficult because then you build something really cool, you launch it and crickets, right? I wish I had a cricket sound effect to play right now, but it's almost anyone who's been an entrepreneur for any period of time has had this exact experience where you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. We built this really cool tool. We've launched it and nothing, right? Because you don't know who you're solving it for, and you haven't reached out to them, and you haven't, articulated the value proposition in a way that actually makes sense to them. I think this is the reason why I work most often with people who are not first-time entrepreneurs, but who are, second or third time, or who are, serial entrepreneurs, because it's usually not the first-time entrepreneurs who even recognize that lean is valuable. The first-time entrepreneurs, often have seen in mainstream media this somebody builds a thing and then they make $1 million, and that's awesome, and I want to do that, so I'm going to build a thing, and then it's going to be successful. And it has not occurred to them yet, you might build something and nothing happens, or that might be. They think that it's about execution, not necessarily about finding the right problem to solve.
Oh, sure.
But a lot of times, after that first experience of, okay, we launched something and nothing happened, how do we avoid having that ever happen again, because it's really painful? Then they'll come to Lean Startup and realize okay, let's not start from what we want to actually build, what's going to be cool. Let's start from who do we want to solve a problem for? Okay, now let's figure out what problems they actually have that are high priorities for them. And then let's try to solve one of those. And once we have that, let's make sure that this group of people that we've talked to is actually representative of a larger market, and not we found this one guy who has a wacky problem and we're going to solve it for him, but nobody else has this problem. And so, yes, I think that I would totally recommend a canvas. I like lean canvas more than business model canvas for early stuff because it tends to focus on the things that you can actually have hypotheses about in the very beginning when you're starting. The business model canvas has more stuff about, partners and key activities, which you don't really know in the beginning, right? Sure. The lean canvas focuses more on problem, solution, value proposition, and it's actually some things that you can have an idea about, and it's fairly easy to put together, right? With a little bit of coaching, you can create your first lean canvas in maybe an hour, and then after that, you can create next ones. Every time you learn something, you can update it in less than 10 minutes. And when you compare that to the process of writing out a huge business plan that might take you, weeks of writing and editing and is like 20 pages or 30 or 40 or 100, and nobody actually reads it after you've created it. Having the 1-page business canvas that actually stays up to date with what you know currently about the business model and what's working is just a much more valuable tool.
Well, yeah, I'm with you. The one thing I would also think about is that we may even be jumping ahead a little bit. Maybe the solution is to actually just have that person do a bunch of customer interviews and help them set up the questions and keep them limited to a set of questions that show them that their solution isn't necessarily the solution that everybody's going to come to for the problem they think they're solving for. So, for example, if I'm trying to build a dog walking service, and I'm really convinced that what people really want out of the dog walking service is that their dogs are, always painted purple, go interview customers with a certain I know it's a dumb example, shut up. But if people, but listen, you laugh at that example, but have you not heard people come up with equally crazy business ideas for problems that don't exist? You have to admit that there's, and I've been in your presence when this has happened, that the number of people who have come up with the weirdest, bizarre shit, and they think that it's because they've identified and they're solving a problem, when really what they've done is they've created this thing that in their head works, but they haven't actually done the research to confirm this is a problem that needs solving.
Yeah, well, I think the bigger challenge is when people have something that sounds logical, but they haven't actually validated anything. Because then it's easy to convince yourself, like, this actually is a great idea. It sounds like a great idea, and everybody I talk to thinks it's a great idea, but I haven't talked to anybody who would actually buy it yet. Right? Yeah.
Or you've been asking questions that everybody would say. If you're asking your friends and you're asking people who like you and you're saying, hey, I'm building this thing, don't you think it's a great idea? Of course they're going to say it's a great idea far and above.
Yeah.
Because
friends and family. Friends and family will always bet on you, not because your idea is good, but because they like you and they think you will succeed regardless of what the idea is. Right.
And look, I think that there are sometimes people come up with ideas that absolutely don't, they luck out and they find something that people want and they're willing to pay for, even though they don't need it. I don't imagine that anybody did any research for the shake weight for that to be an exercise tool that people needed.
I'm sure there was research that went into that.
That's not the kind of research, all right? That's like when the internet talks about research and science, that's a very different thing. And don't ask me to explain that. Look it up, kids. Or don't look it up at work. Just FYI. Anyway, yes.
I think we've gotten away from the original question, which is if you're working with a startup that thinks that they have the solution, but they want to do lean, how do you help them? And I always go back to the no plan survives first contact with the enemy, which is Helmuth von Moltke the Elder. Or if you prefer a more modern reference, Mike Tyson's everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Which is oddly brilliant advice from a man who doesn't always have the smartest stuff going on.
He's right. And I think the best way you can help a startup that's in that situation is help them get punched in the face as quickly as possible.
There you go.
It's, they think they've got this great thing and you think that it's not going to work. And that's a great opportunity for you to show them for you both. Maybe they will show you that it does work, but like, rather than continuing to build it, see if they can sell it to anybody before it's built. And that will, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of ways to do that, that don't require a huge investment. And that's, if you can sell them on a small experiment to see whether they can get any traction. It's easy to imagine that you'll have, sudden uptick until you've actually done anything. And then once you try to like, even, if you think it's terrible and you say, well, let's spend $100 on Google AdWords and see if we can get some email signups even. And
Right.
if that doesn't provide anything, then suddenly people will say, oh, wait a minute, we have a major problem. What's going on here? What did we do wrong? But that's a fairly low bar to cross, right? Like you really ideally want to get to the like, get people to engage in the purchase process and actually think that they're purchasing this thing that's not ready yet, and then tell them like,
Right.
okay, actually, we're not ready yet. We're not going to take your money yet, but thank you for letting us know that you actually wanted to buy it.
Yeah, let me put my marketing hat on for just a second and just say that part of that may mean if you spend $100 on, let's say, Facebook ads or Google ads or something like that, part of what you may also have challenge with is how you're actually receiving people. So one of the things that we've encountered with clients in the past is that they get really great engagement online. All the metrics look right. They get, the audience targeting looks great. There's low cost per click. We're in the right sweet spot. And then magically, nobody signs up for it. Nobody pays for it. Nobody's interested in it. And it raises questions of, did we target properly? Are we using the right calls to action? There's a whole chunk ahead of that, in addition to maybe you're not, maybe the button is ugly, or you're not asking for the right action. I mean, there's 50,000 ways to do that. But I agree with you in principle. The one thing to bear in mind is that unless you go out and actually test something, unless you really sit down and conceptualize what the problem is that is leading to this solution, then at that point, you're just making it up as you go along. And that's fine, but that's not lean.
Yeah. Well, and just to clarify for anyone who's listening, I would strongly advocate for doing in-person customer development interviews as a first step, not building a landing page and driving traffic to it with an ad campaign. But I think that the challenge when somebody is already that many steps down the road is you have to show them some kind of negative signal that says, hey, this is not going as well as you think it's going. Maybe you want to make sure that you actually have something here before you invest a whole lot in building it.
Agreed. Cool. Well, if anybody else has any thoughts on that, feel free to write into us or to leave a comment or reach out in one of the 50 ways that we mentioned at the end of every episode. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Our next question, which also comes from Quora, is asking about, a subject that Teague and I are very familiar with, the luxury fashion space.
Sure. Yeah.
Anyway, but the question is there such a thing as an MVP, a minimum viable product for a luxury fashion startup? And the question comes from the idea that traditional lean startup model does not apply to luxury startups, which face the unique challenge of launching with a desirable product from the get-go. In a sector where brand essence and desirability is so important, I can't see how a scrappy startup route might work. And again, I'm quoting from the question. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I agree with that, but I also think I agree with the idea that you really have to hit the ground running, in a sense, for brands to really be effective in that space. What are your thoughts?
So my first thought, of course, is I always have to throw out the disclaimer. I hate the term MVP because it gets misused so often in startups. And so I like to talk about, like, what are we actually saying here, right? Are we talking about a small run of the physical product? Are we talking about designing a website that can sell this stuff? Like, what's the actual experiment that they're running? Because I think a lot of different people will say MVP and mean 10 different things. It's kind of like if you've ever walked into a room of developers and says, okay, who in this room practices Agile? And all the hands will go up. And then if you actually ask 10 people what they mean by that, they'll answer 10 different things.
Well, the better example actually is that development means something different to different people, because development in the technical world is technology development and coding and building products and such. But development also means fundraising if you're in the nonprofit world. And if you're in the international development space, it means international development is aid, right? It means programs to help folks develop their communities. So let's take a step back then for a second. Let's presume that the concept of the MVP isn't quite what we're discussing, and really the idea is that you need to start with a product. And in the fashion world, particularly the luxury fashion world, it seems, if you don't hit the ground with something that people are going to absolutely love, your brand is kind of trashed from the start. I guess, do you agree with that supposition?
So it's an interesting question, right? I think there's certain things that you can take the risk out of in approaching, from a luxury fashion perspective, trying to do lean. I do think that branding is something that is more difficult to experiment with because there's fewer signals and it's harder to separate out cause and effect, right? So you can do 5 different things to try and build your brand, but you can't necessarily separate out the influence of those different things on building the brand. Right? You can't necessarily tell the difference between, like, was the logo redesign a good thing? Was the sponsoring this live event a good thing? Was the video on our homepage the thing that changed brand perception? But there are things that you can do to discover what people are looking for in a brand.
Sure.
I don't know. What are your thoughts on brand development? That's more your area than mine.
See, I think that actually in this particular instance, brand development comes from the product themselves. You can't, you can take this, the juicy couture route and sell relatively cheap stuff that just is, made up to look really fancy when everybody knows that it's not, or you can go and you can really actually apply lean and iterate on products and build them into something that people want and love. Some of the suggestions in the chat here that I'm absolutely in love with are the idea of you can actually do customer validation for these kinds of products before you make a big splash. You can take a product, let's say it's a kind of men's shoes, let's say, nice leather men's shoes, and you can go and try to sell it, and you can get customer responses in the store. Set up a little pop-up at some tiny little spot and just see what people like and don't. And it may be that you're chasing the wrong audience or you're chasing the wrong price point. I mean, there's 50 different things it can be, but you actually can go and try to sell these things and just see what people think. And in a way, that at least from the get-go is at least more of the lean process. It's not necessarily that you want to go and take a pair of shoes with you to people who are just out and about and, hey, do you like these shoes? What do you think about these shoes? But you can actually, I mean, you can do a pop-up, you can do customer validation through, I should say, you can do brand development by lumping it together with other kinds of brands that you think are good alignment. There's ways of doing those kinds of business-related relationships to try to build on those as well. I don't think that you can do the sort of traditional iterative, I suppose a minimum viable product in the sense of men's shoes is, do you have a pair of men's leather shoes regardless of what they look like? I guess technically that satisfies most people's definition of a minimally viable product. But as Jonas was saying in the chat, it's not a minimally loved product. And I think actually that's probably a better thing to try to hit. What is the thing you're going to build or try to build on and to that people will actually really enjoy? And then you build your brand around that.
Yeah. Well, I think we're blurring the line between high quality and luxury, right? And
sure.
The impression I get from the person asking the question is that there's a question about the really high-end luxury stuff is beyond just like high quality things that are priced accordingly. It's things that are priced above what they cost to make because of the perception of them being luxury products, because of the perceived exclusivity, right? It's the Birkin bag, right? It's the things that are priced so much more than what the cost is to make them, that the reason you buy them is partly because of the price. And can you do a product like that in a lean way?
I don't know. I don't know that you can start something very few people successfully start something that is so luxury priced from the get-go that somebody will buy into it. Part of that is a perceived cachet, right? The kind Jimmy Choo's shoes for women are revered in the circles where people revere shoes because they're really well made. They represent a certain lifestyle and a certain brand, but they didn't start that way. Jimmy Choo designed shoes and people bought into it, and it elevated. The reason that we the reason that we follow the works of certain artists is because they're innovative or they're exemplary of a certain kind of style, or the artists themselves were such compelling figures that we are interested in them. But the art by itself as a simple object doesn't necessarily represent the price point of a painting. So sometimes it's the story behind it, and that carries it. Lean doesn't necessarily address that. Some of that is very much marketing, and you have to really think about it from a brand and a minimum brand perspective, which is a whole other conversation. But no, I think that in the end, you can apply some of the processes. I think you just have to think about it in that unique specific instance. I think that translates to a lot of different kinds of businesses too. You do have to sometimes make it unique to where you are.
So you can also definitely you can use the lean approach to figure out what is the particular problem you're solving for somebody that may not be a logistical problem, but it may be an emotional problem, right? What is the thing that they want to associate themselves with in a brand that they're looking for? Do they want to be seen as youthful? Do they want to be seen as adventurous? Do they want to be seen as what is the emotional need that you're trying to fill with this luxury brand? But I think also your point about like you build a reputation over time, right? Brands don't, you can't invent a brand overnight that is a luxury brand. You have to grow it like a tree. And then at some point you actually start to be able to reap the rewards of that brand because of the reputation that has gone along with it. But you can't just invent a reputation and say like, this is what we're known for.
Yeah, people who do, sometimes, every now and again, somebody is successful in doing that, and it has more to do with a very short-term, splashy kind of effect, more than it seldom ever does actually grow from a sort of a big, somebody starts big and they just happen to be big and they stay big for a while. Truthfully, I reference him not nearly often enough because I think that he's loud and a pain in the ass. But the truth is that Gary Vaynerchuk in this particular instance is absolutely right, that it takes hustle. It takes hard work to build those brands. And lean is the beginning of that. And it's absolutely valuable in this space, but it's certainly not the only tool set. It's a valuable one. It's not the first place I would look if I was building a luxury brand, and specifically luxury products.
Yeah. Well, and in the beginning in particular, and Gary Vee personifies this, like people buy from people they like.
Yeah.
And he is one of the most likable people. If you meet him in person, like he gives you his full attention.
Yep.
And it's kind of amazing because he's a big deal. Like he's very well known and he's very busy, but like when you are standing in front of him, you have his complete undivided attention, and it shows. Yeah,
absolutely. We should get him on the show. That's ever going to happen.
Maybe someday. No, we'll build our brand first, like a tree.
Are we not the biggest of brands already?
Yeah. We're getting there.
I really want you.
We just say it and then it's true, right?
Yeah, no, but I really want you to actually believe it, because when you're like, yeah, sure, it's not encouraging. Sometimes you got to fake it till you make it. It's gonna be like, yeah, we're a great brand. People love us. Oh God. Anyway. You know what?
Note,
you love it.
Should we dive into our next question?
Oh, please. I insist. You read it.
Okay. So this one is a little bit broader. The question is, what is the best way to organize a technology startup company in terms of projects? So this comes from somebody who is growing a startup company with a product that consists of software, hardware, and a service component. What are some good practices in organizing a company project-wise? So I'm going to interpret this as organizational structure, right? How do we organize the people to do the best work in this environment?
Yeah.
And I think that there's a couple things that are particularly useful here, and sort of broad organizational design overview. Lex Cisney writes a lot about this, and so he's a good resource for that. But from an organizational design perspective, like first off, like the fact that this person is thinking about how to structure the organization at all is a good thing, right? Rather than just sort of like falling into whatever seems to happen. And re-examining the structure is a great thing to do anytime the strategy changes or anytime you move to a new life cycle stage, a new size of the company. When you move through sort of like the various inflection points of the company, you start with a single founder, and then you have a small team, and then you have more team than you can feed with a single pizza, and then you have there are various stages, and we can go into more detail about that. But from a design perspective, you want to make sure that you have separation of certain characteristics. So you don't want to have any function that is tasked with efficiency reporting to a function that is tasked with effectiveness, or vice versa, because you'll end up having them bleed together. And what that means is, say you've got an IT department that is tasked with making sure that your computers run, right? It's kind of a binary, like the computers are either running or they're not. You don't get a whole lot of value out of the computers running, at 95% efficiency versus 90% efficiency or 99% efficiency. It's just they work or they don't. You can do the job or you can't. And so like the efficiency of how do we make sure they're running with the least amount of costs and the least amount of downtime is a very efficiency based approach. Whereas on the software development side, you might be looking at, okay, we're writing algorithms and these algorithms take time to run. And so we need to squeeze every last bit out of running those algorithms. And that's an effectiveness function. So you want to maximize the performance that you get out of that with no regard for cost, but the regard is not cost first. It's performance first. And if you end up having one of those report to the other, whichever one is at the top of the reporting structure will take the cake, right? So if you have software development, reporting into IT will treat it as a cost center and will try to minimize the costs without recognizing how much that is hamstringing the company. Another area that you want to be careful about is short versus long term. So you don't want to have short term project focused groups reporting to the same folks as long-term sort of strategic initiatives, because almost always the long-term will end up being in service to the short-term, right? So one example of that is like brand building, right? Brand building is totally a long-term thing, as we were just discussing. But if you end up having brand building reporting into, say, marketing that is responsible for lead gen, you end up not investing in any of the long-term stuff because everybody starts focusing on how can we get the most leads generated in the short term. And finally, there's a distinction between sort of autonomy and control, and certain groups need to have more autonomy to be able to deliver solutions to the customer. And often the autonomy groups are things like customer service or customer facing product delivery functions that need to be able to have the autonomy to solve the customer's problem in the moment, right? They're closest to the customer and they need to be able to solve that. At the other end of the spectrum, you have sort of the control functions like legal and HR and finance, where you want to make sure that those functions are more centralized and don't have autonomy because their whole goal is to prevent systematic risk to the entire company. So that's sort of the broad overview of organizational design. And I'll let Jason talk now because I've just talked for a long time.
No, I'm not even angry. I'm impressed. Truthfully, in case you guys haven't noticed, this is kind of where Teague eats lunch. This is very much his area of expertise in terms of how companies can, build their structure internally to be most effective. The only thing I would add to that, frankly, is that like anything else, it is actually iterative. I know that in the last couple of years of building my agency and now in our merged agency, the way that we function, the way in which we respond and report to one another, the challenges that we face require a constant reevaluation of these processes. I'll give a great example: proposals, right? It used to be that I could write a proposal in a Word document. I had a template I built, I'd get it out in about an hour, we're done. We now work with a team where it's been clear that part of what people want to see in our proposals are what we look like. And I don't mean our headshots. I mean, what does our branding work look like? How do we represent ourselves? What are the, how do we choose typeface and balance that with visual elements and all that stuff? So we've had to adjust, and I personally have had to adjust my process, because part of what I need to do is write a lot of text and then hand that off to somebody who's going to make sure that it looks and presents as well as it should. I'm going to include text that they've already written up that goes in certain sections. And then that gets handed off to a designer to lay out and put into an InDesign file. It's a longer process and it requires many more hands. And so, that'll probably change too. We'll get to a point where I need to be able to churn those out faster and we'll be able to address that accordingly. But in any good growing culture, you're going to hit walls, you're going to hit snags. That's not the problem. It's addressing them and fixing them. And if you don't, then that's the problem. So yeah. I think your thoughts on how to structure and the different challenges between short and long term and, resource allocation and all that, I think that's absolutely valuable stuff. I think the one thing to also bear in mind is shit changes, learn to roll with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you may reach a point where the company is so large that you can no longer be personally involved in every proposal that goes out. Right. And so then you need to figure out what the structure looks like then. And at what point, what level of approval do you have on things going out? And at what point do you have to start delegating even the approval of it? So there may be proposals that go out that you never even see.
Oh, If we are so fortunate to get that big,
High
my
quality
goodness,
problems, right?
that would be a high quality problem. I just need somebody to give me a couple of $1 million, and then we'll have that problem. So if you know anybody, I'm open to ideas.
I'll keep an ear out.
I bet you will. Anyway, so on to our, unless there's something else you wanted to mention on that topic.
I think I kind of talked that one to death.
Okay.
So we'll probably move on from there.
Yeah. So this is actually a really good question. As an entrepreneur, how do you know when you have the right team in your corner? Now, to be fair, this could apply to a couple of different teams. This could be the team that you've hired, the team that you're working with internally to build and sell what you're trying to build and sell. It can also be your board of directors or your advisory group, right? The team that tells you how to manage all of these different things. And it could be your personal team, your significant other, your family, your friends, your kids. How do you know when everybody's aligned in the right way to help you succeed? I don't know that there's a right answer for this for everybody, but I think that it's sort of, you know when you know. I don't know how else to explain it. It's definitely the kind of thing, for me at least, where you have to be in it to sort of feel it out. In part, it's understanding where the different pitfalls are from a strategic perspective as well as an operational one. But it's also, you hire people based on a document that they send to you and a couple of conversations that you have, and you hope, fingers crossed, that it actually will work out. And a lot of times it does, and a lot of times it doesn't. So I think it's that sense that, I don't know, for me, the answer is, I know I have the right team when I stop worrying about the team and I'm worried a lot more about getting the work in the door.
That's a good litmus test.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that as a broad sort of solution, right, the right team is one where you stop worrying about if you have the right team and shit just needs to get done. And then you just got to go do the thing that's your part to get it done. So I don't know. What do you think?
Well, so I have a couple of thoughts on this.
Shocking.
Shocking indeed. One of the things that always sort of jumps to mind is Team of Rivals, Doris Kearns Goodwin's book about Lincoln and his cabinet, and the idea of having people who actually will have that vibrant discussion or debate or argument at the top level, and then you as the leader of that team make a decision and everybody gets behind it and moves forward. I think you run into a lot of problems when you have a team where everybody thinks the same thing and you don't have diversity of opinion and experience, because diversity leads to better decisions. And you want those decisions to surface to the management level, right? You want to make sure that those discussions are happening in a way that you actually get involved in them, and can see both sides of it. And you don't want, the discussion to happen somewhere farther down in the organization and then come up to you and somebody just presents it, fait accompli. And you don't really know, you don't get to hear the other side of it. Hiring for diversity, I think, is a great thing. Yeah. And making sure that you have people with strong opinions who will, strong beliefs loosely held, is the mantra, right? You want people who have strong opinions and will talk about them and then will let go of them when the company decides to move in a different direction, because you're never going to make everybody happy. And if you're trying to, even a great team will end up failing. The other thing that I really, that I think a lot about is cultural fit. And I think that, hiring for cultural fit, is both one of the best and worst things for a company. And I think it depends entirely on how it's done. In companies where the cultural fit is, we'll know it when we see it, I think it can be really damaging, because people end up hiring people who look like them, and you lose all of that diversity of experience and of opinion and of skills, because you've hired people who are, have the same set of skills, same experiences, look the same, sound the same. And that's because, culture is a hard thing to assess without, some sort of distance from it. Right. So when you don't have a codified culture that says, like, this is what our culture is, people end up just, hiring homogeneously. Yeah. And so one of the tools that I find really useful for defining a culture is a culture inventory, where you talk about what the actual modes of getting work done in an organization are, and make that very clear and share that with people who you're interviewing with, and interview for fit on those different pieces. And when we talk about culture, we're not talking about free beer and ping pong, right? We're talking about folkways and power distance. The ideas of is it appropriate for a junior person in your organization to bring an idea directly to the CEO? In some organizations that works really well, in others it doesn't. And those are two different cultures. Neither one is better or worse, but knowing which one you are, and then interviewing people based on that is a great way to determine whether you actually have a good cultural fit.
I agree. I think that there's also a larger conversation around what is culture that is worth that conversation. Boy, that was redundant.
In fact, we may talk a little bit about that in our next episode. Make sure you subscribe to the email list so you get a notification when it goes out.
Boy, talk about the soft sell, Teague. Anyway, no, I mean, I do think that there's a question of culture in knowing what the right team is. I mean, I know of a business, and again, I certainly would never say names, but I know of a business where some of the folks who work there are unhappy, and part of the reason that they're unhappy is because they feel like...
You only know of one business like that?
I know of one specific in mind that is having a challenge around culture, and that several of the people who work there are unhappy, and they know that they're the right people to get the job done, but part of the challenge for them is that they're not being given the culture, the tools by the executive team to really succeed in that area. And I think that oftentimes we talk about how culture is, as oftentimes it's top down, it's in out, it's, everybody's got their opinion of it, but you are as responsible to your team as they are to you. And you may have the right team in place and not know it because you were so wrapped up in your own crap that you missed the signs. And I think that's a real concern that people should bear in mind as well. I think that when you are a founder of a startup, it is incumbent upon you to think about these things in advance and recognize that, yes, the team that needs to be there to build your business should be the right team, but you have a responsibility to be a member of that team and not just to assemble it and then have them do what you want.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the servant leader model, where the leader views their job as removing obstacles for their team, and providing an environment where they can do great work. Because a bad organizational structure and a bad culture will kill a great team every time. Yeah. Right? You can have the most brilliant people in the world, and they're exactly the right people, but if the culture is bad structure, they're just not going to be able to do good work.
I agree. Yeah. Well, on that note, I want to take, since we have a few minutes towards the end of the show, we do have a live question here from our fabulous constant listener, Mr. Wonderful, that I do want to get to. And of course, guys, if you have any additional thoughts about any of the questions that we've addressed here today, we'd love to hear from you. So leave us a note, shoot us a tweet, whatever makes you happiest. Mr. Wonderful's question is a very, very simple but direct one. Who is your dream client? And my dream client is anybody who wants to give me a lot of money and give me very little work to do for it. Is that not?
You can do better than that.
I absolutely can do better than that. I guess I'll go first then. My dream client. So I have a couple of dream clients. I really love working with clients that are funded startups that have a lot of really smart technology and need help translating that into a broader brand. So dream clients for me are guys who, guys that are fresh out of Y Combinator or 500 startups who've started to build, they've got a Series A and they're really ready to grow. They're really ready to be sort of the grown-up voice in their space. And so I can point to any number of different companies that are in that regard. Otherwise, in terms of just dream companies that I'd love to work with, God, I'd love to work with Nike. I'd love to work for Disney. I'd love to work for, the Fortune 500s that we all know and love. I'd love to do a Coke ad campaign. I'd love to build a website for Amazon. I mean, not just because of their size or their the amount of money that they have, but I love companies that have really made an impact. And I think that in working with them, I feel like not only are we getting value as a business, but we'd learn a lot from companies like that. As I've mentioned ad nauseum in previous episodes, I worked at Hulu, and one of the great loves of my time at Hulu was I got to see the inner workings of NBC Universal from the inside. And I connected with people who run the organizations at Bravo and Oxygen and NBC.com. And I got to go meet with the producers at Saturday Night Live. And I swear to God, I'm not bragging. I really am just talking about experience. And one of the cool things about that was seeing how these places actually operate, that my participation in that conversation and in doing something with them brought value to them, and by exchange brought value to me. So my dream clients are bigger guys, but it's not because they're just arbitrarily bigger. It's because I think that there's a lot of learning that can go in both directions in those relationships. Anyway,
that was really good.
Thanks. Yeah. I mean,
that's a lot better than your first answer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my first answer, we said dream, right? Dream, not realistic. I mean, I suppose Nike is a dream too.
Could be.
Well,
could be realistic.
Yeah. The challenge, I think, in dreaming of clients is there are dream clients that are attainable. It's a matter of deciding what's more important in those client relationships. I can probably go to work for Nike and probably have them as listed as a client and probably get paid $500 for it. And in certain instances, that might be okay because the value of the Nike name is going to bring me more business. It's going to make up the difference. But I don't know. I think it's a challenge that defining what a dream client is in part, what are your dreams? What's the level of dream? Some people just dream for enough clients that they can consistently eat. So I guess that's a thing too. Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah.
I think, yours are so good. I kind of want to say, you do my dream client too. Right? You can explain mine. Right?
Absolutely. I actually can.
Could you? Let's try this as an experiment.
Sure.
See whether, if you cannot, it will not be because of your failure. It will be because I have failed to adequately explain to you in a way that you can explain to others.
Okay. I believe that your dream client is somebody who is building a company, who has traction, who has a specific vision, and needs somebody to organize is the wrong word, but somebody to keep things moving while he pushes things forward. He's the one cutting down the path. You're the guy making sure that everybody behind is caught up, is organized, and is ready for anything that comes at them. You're the kind of person who wants to help make sure that the organization itself is executed well, that it's well managed, that people are being listened to, that the culture is such that it's being representative of everybody's interests without being overwhelmed by the multiple voices of a democracy, that the person that you're working for has a clear sense of these are the things I need to worry about, and I, Teague, am going to take care of everything else, and we're going to make sure that we're coordinated on that attack, and that you look for somebody where it's not that just that you can bring value, because I think everybody wants to bring value, but that you can make a material impact on the company's culture and organization in such a way that when you leave, they are markedly better for your having been there. How did I do?
That's pretty good. Yeah, I was going to go with the it's growing startups where the founder is looking for a right-hand man. Cue Hamilton music.
Oh God.
Right? Now it's gonna be stuck in your head all day.
No,
right?
But we have to get Lauren Worley back here, in part because she's no longer at NASA and she's working for the One Foundation, and I want to hear more about that. But also because she'd never heard of the Hamilton musical, and if you haven't heard of it, I suggest looking it up. But just the idea of a musical about Alexander Hamilton was such a funny concept to her that she didn't care that it's one of the hottest musicals in the last 10 years of Broadway. She just started making up ridiculous songs about Alexander Hamilton and just how
that's fantastic.
Yeah, it was pretty great. Anyway, worth having her back at some point, nonetheless. No, look, I think that for each of us, and I think actually this is a larger question about what an ideal client really means to people, or an ideal customer in that regard. I think your answer is a perfectly valid one. I want to be the right-hand man to somebody who is, building a company that has value and has some money to throw around.
But your answer is totally better. Mine's just shorter.
No. My point is that mine isn't better. Mine is more emotional. Yours is more direct. I mean, my answer that I gave could just as easily be, I want to work with Fortune 500 companies that have, $1 million or more to spend on marketing. It's a perfectly valuable answer and perfectly viable one. It also is totally devoid of emotion. So everybody's answer is right. The question is, does that answer really represent everything you're looking for? Mine may be too verbose for some people. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and I think, on some level, the answer may be more resonant. It also takes more time to deliver. And so that's why we kind of need both. If I were to go into the emotional side of things, I'd probably talk about I want to work with leaders who are conscious in their capitalism, people who are interested in both doing good and doing well, and who want to make sure that they're delivering real value to their customers. They're they're making enough of a return that people can not have to worry about the money, and that they are creating an environment where they want to create an environment where all of their employees actually love to come to work every day.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, I think that it's a valid question. I think it's a valid question in terms of what we do as our business. I think that one of the other things that is also important to ask is, who would you work with if money wasn't a factor, right? Because I would love, if we had all the money in the world, I would love to spend my days helping startups that have no money and have no ability. One of the first things, you and I have talked about this offline a bunch, I would love to find a way to bring value to startups that have no money, because they need it. They need it more than anybody else. I mean, how do you take a concept that is stuck in somebody's brain and actually communicate it to a larger audience? I tried very hard to find a solution that was low cost, low impact to me and high value to the entrepreneur. And it's really hard. And I'm not at a place where I can deliver that yet. I may not be able to, I don't know.
Yeah. I do office hours on Skype and Google Hangouts with entrepreneurs on occasion, because I find that that's one way to provide some of that value. And most of that is with early stage startups. And as we both know, early stage startups, a lot of them don't turn into funded startups or profitable startups. And so most of those are not actually, most of that's not actually lead gen. Most of that is just community development.
Yeah.
Right. And we've both been involved with the DC Lean Startup community, DC Lean Startup Circle. And a lot of that is also, it's community development. It's we're supporting the entrepreneurial scene where we're probably not going to make a whole lot of money off of that ever.
Nope.
Right.
Nope.
But
it's probably better that way, to be honest. I think it also takes some of the value that you're trying to bring to the table out of it when you're also trying to charge them $500 a month or something like that. So,
yeah. I think you're right.
Yeah. Anyway, I think that's enough humble bragging from me and you. As we've come to the end of the show, a couple of things before we do our sign off. Again, just want to remind everybody, we'd love to have you guys, subscribe to the mailing list and keep track of things, because we are, we're doing things on the podcast side that we're not doing here on Blab. We'd love for you guys to check those out and give us your feedback as well. And you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I think we should try and get Gary Vaynerchuk on the show. So for those of you here in the chat, as well as listening via podcast, I've listed an address that you can link to fill out a form and tell Gary that you want him to come on the show, because why the heck not? And if we get everybody to write in, I'm sure somebody might actually notice. So there you go.
Excellent.
Indeed.
Good deal.
Yes. Teague, my friend, where can people reach out to you online if they want to follow up or ask questions?
I keep saying it's teaguehopkins.com, and then it occurs to me that people who are listening probably have no idea how to spell Teague. So Teague is Teague, like league, but with a T, and Hopkins is spelled like the college or like the university. .com, and that's where you can find me, and it's the same on Twitter @TeagueHopkins.
Indeed, and you can find me @Jason Nellis, and that's JASONNELLIS. Or you can email me at jason@brilliant.co, and that's BRLLNT.co. As always, we'll be here each and every week with lots of news and tidbits and thoughts and discussion. We appreciate your time, and we hope that you have a great week. And for those of you that experienced the snow that we did, we hope that you are dug out by now. If you live in DC, that still might be a question, to be honest.
It's true.
Indeed. All right, and with that, thanks again, and have a great week. We'll be right back.